everyone. Welcome in. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm excited to be here on this wonderful Monday night after a very short weekend. Thank you guys for coming in. My name is Jason, Mr. America, the Bearded Truth. I am your neighborhood-friendly libertarian. And once again, thank you for coming in and enjoying your Monday night with me. As always, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, right about that time. And I want to first give a big thank you to Muddy Waters of Media for allowing me to use this platform in order to talk about the issues, the politics, the social issues that are going on not only in this country, but also around the world. Give you guys my spin on things and be able to help drive it's important that we have the individual in mind whenever we talk about the changes of what's going on. So there's a lot of, I completely forgot to share this out. A lot of big news has been breaking over the last couple of days, and it's very important that we discern the information, that we analyze the information, that we understand who the winners and who the losers are supposed to be in these instances, and we fight to ensure that any changes made, that the end result is bettering the lives of those we seek to provide for. Now, oftentimes what we see from legislators and from changes that are being implemented is that the desired effect is not the actual outcome, and so certainly that is a big issue that we're going to cover tonight with a couple of different topics, not only of the topics of what we've listed there on YouTube and Facebook channels, but if you guys are following in from Periscope, I will just read you guys the synopsis. Important to wait. I'm sorry. So tonight, Jason talks about some of the topics that may offend, trigger, or just make you want to go crazy. Trump calls people's names, and the media responds as if he was a man of good character before and has recently stooped to this level. Chelsea Handler admits that Trump derangement syndrome hit her pretty hard. And DHS is looking for a new face to lead the organization as Kirstjen Nielsen is stepping down effective this upcoming Wednesday. Freedom of speech has been under fire recently around the world. Two stories that we're going to be covering. The first in Australia and the second in Sacramento, California. Both of these stories all of these stories have much value, and they really need to be handled with honesty. Now, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for some of the media to do this stuff. So that's why you guys come to alternative media sources. This is why you guys go to the Boogie Bumper. This is why you guys go to the Real James Politics, or Real Person Politics James. This is why you guys go to Muddy Waters of Freedom. This is why you listen to Spike and Matt on Tuesday nights as they discern this information and spin it in a very comedic way, but also in a very telltale way There is huge monumental issues in this country that need to be addressed. I first want to start off with the topic that Trump called Secret Service Director Dumbo because of his ears. Ooh, President Trump mocking somebody else. The media became quickly enamored with this story and outraged, just absolutely outraged, that President Trump previously made fun of his Secret Service director's appearance by calling him Dumbo because of his ears. Ooh. Two officials said that they had seen this. Randolph Tex Alice was the name of this individual, and the media is taking this as if this is the first time that President Trump has mocked other people. President Trump makes If you guys haven't realized this, if you guys are not Trump-based, if you guys are not Trump supporters or involved with people that are, one of the things that Trump has always been loved and adored by his supporters is the fact that he has quite comical names. We've used some of those names here on this show. Shifty, Adam Schiff. Why am I blanking on these? Lion Comey. The man has had names for people And whether it's about their physical appearance, whether it's about their integrity, whether it's about their character, the man has made names for people. This is not a first time, and it's not something that should be so newsworthy as what they're doing here. The problem is that the media has what they expect their base to be. And so when they call this stuff out, they're like, oh, look at this. Trump has once again shown that he is not of the most upstanding character. This isn't news for anybody. If you feel as if this is going to change the hearts and minds of anyone, you're not paying attention to politics at all. You're not paying attention to what side you're talking to. You may be emboldening your side to where they're going to be outraged, and this is going to be the final tick. This is going to be the thing that pushes them over the edge, and they're going to now fight and advocate for 2020 to go to the Democratic president, however unlikely that looks. But at the end of the day, you're not saying anything. This is all white noise. When you constantly go after arguably really stupid things, there's plenty of viewers here that have probably made fun of my looks in some ways. That's fine. Make fun of my looks. It doesn't mean a damn thing. So when the media spins up about this stuff, it really is telling just of how little that they actually care about things. And while we talk about this, Trump mocks, leftist press mocks Trump. The apple in the tree is the same DNA. Media has no moral authority on this. Oh, absolutely right. Fatini. Oh, I apologize. I am horrible at pronouncing names sometimes. Yes, absolutely right. The apple in the tree is the same DNA. Absolutely right on that. The media, who has been mocking so many people, has attacked Trump from multiple different ways. You remember when President Trump had his health assessed? And they accused the doctor. They accused the doctor of being biased and being corrupt and just trying to push the narrative that President Trump is somehow healthier than what he really is, when he's just a gluttonous fool and he doesn't even know how to drink water. The media has been all over President Trump for anything and everything, but they truly do act as if they are somehow sitting in a fortified house, and that house happens to be made of glass when the actuality comes through. While we're talking about Trump, I do want to get into something good that President Trump did. Because if we're going to talk down about Trump, of course it's important that we talk about some of the good things that he's doing. Ooh, I apologize. I am extremely apologetic for this. This was news to me, but I had missed this. This was from December of last year, but it's still a good piece of information that we need to share. So Trump had, back in December, officially legalized industrial hemp. This was a bill that was pushed by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Jeff Merkley, and Ron Wyden. So 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats on the bill, and this bill was introduced to legalize hemp, which was ultimately included in the Farm Bill. So that Farm Bill that really did push for socialism, push for redistribution of wealth, pushed for protectionism of our farmers as the tariffs were affecting everything. This was pushed into there. It's always good to see legalizing something. Right? Legalize whatever it is. I'm of that mindset that when you allow more freedom, when you allow for more markets, the only thing that you're hurting is, quote unquote, the black market. You're not hurting individuals, especially not the hemp. So when it comes to hemp, why is hemp such a beautiful product? Why is it such a good? Why is it such an amazing good? Because not only does it grow at a rate much faster than trees to where we can make paper with it, but you can make clothing with it. You can make a whole litany of things. There are plenty of great things that you can do with hemp, and it's not even one of the what is the word? It's not one that will make you intoxicated. It won't make you high. It doesn't have the THC in it. And so this isn't for medicinal reasons that hemp is being legalized, but merely to allow for us to be able to produce paper, cardboard. Let me see if they actually have a list in here. So the Farm Bill helps remove the obstacles farmers face in growing hemp, including restricted access to banking, water rights, crop insurance. Hemp is easier to grow than cotton, corn, or soybeans. That's right, soy boys. Sorry, you're out. As it requires little water and can be viable in lower quality soil that is not practical for other crops. The hemp provision is just one of several aspects of the Farm Bill meant to aid farmers as exports of agricultural products such as soybeans take a hit as Trump engages in bitter trade war with China and other countries. So this was a way in order to make it much better. Vitamins, medicine, oil, building materials, clothes, tons of stuff. Exactly. There's a whole entire ridiculous list of things that are on there, as well as what the Declaration of Independence was written on. So the list for hemp and why it is good and why it is great is plentiful. Why it took us until 2018, the end of 2018, for this to be legalized, I have no idea. It seems as if there might have been a business out there. There might have been a corporation. There might have been a market out there that was thriving because they were stepping in the way. They were stepping in the way of other producers, of other goods from being able to hit the market. And that's something that I want you guys to remember. Just remember that little part, that usually whenever there's a call for more regulation or a call to make something illegal or to prevent something from becoming legalized, usually it's because there's something to be gained by those who are calling for it. And so I want you to remember that message, because we're going to get back to that later on in the show, and it's going to be important. So just hold on to that little nugget of information. It's vindicated through and through. So while we talk about some of the actual positive effects of what Trump has pushed, and the Republicans and Democrats, this was bipartisan on those sides. I want to talk about Trump Derangement Syndrome. And Trump Derangement Syndrome is something that I've covered quite a few times, as most people that are objective can see that it's true, right? The left, the Democrats, it's palpable at this point that you can point at somebody who has Trump Derangement Syndrome. It is somebody that is just utterly disgusted with the idea that you could be Republican, that you could be conservative, that you could be libertarian, that you could believe in free markets, that you don't believe in big government, and all of these other things. Trump Derangement Syndrome is really an issue, right? It's not just on an individual basis, but when you have media sources, when you have journalists, when you have news anchors, when you have opinion video show hosts that have Trump Derangement Syndrome and that are incapable and unable to look at things objectively, they push out a lot of nonsensical bull that really does spur up and cause a lot of hysteria and terror, and it really does just tear at the fabric of this country. And Trump Derangement Syndrome has been a huge issue. Well, Chelsea Handler finally comes out and admits that Trump's 2016 win sent her to the shrink. And it hooked her on the marijuanas. It hooked her on the weed. She was so devastated. Here's how the story goes. Comedian and activist Chelsea Handler shared Friday that she is to seek out a psychiatrist after Donald Trump's victory in 2016 presidential election. Handler explained during the appearance on Real Time with Bill Maher that she went through a midlife identity crisis. That's right. President Trump shocked the world by defeating Hillary Clinton and shook her to her core. She had never felt her life feel so unhinged. That's a quote from her. Now, I want to get into this paragraph here, because if Trump being elected to office never made her life feel so unhinged, this next paragraph really is going to put a lot into perspective. I'm going to read it in its entirety. I had to pay a psychiatrist to listen to me bitch about Donald Trump for about the first 3 weeks. And then once we got past that and got to real stuff, I realized the parallel there was my world becoming unhinged when I was a little girl. My brother died when I was 9 years old. That's right, her brother died when she was 9 years old. And she had never been so unhinged as to when the President of the United States was elected into office. Now, this is a really, really telling stance. If the President of the United States getting elected causes you this much anguish, this much turmoil, this much destruction to your emotional character, the ability for you to survive day to day is just too much to bear, then the President of the United States has way too much authority, has way too much control over the lives and the aspects of everyday Americans. But I digress, because she is not one of those people that wants less government. She's one of those that wants bigger government. It really is one of those cognitive dissonances, right? I want more government, but I don't want the people I don't want to have the bigger government, but I know it swings both ways. I just don't know how to live my life. Well, if you don't want your enemies to have that power, you don't want to have your allies having it either. She continues on. I had never related the two, but for me, as I can imagine, it must have been for so many people. It was an emotional trigger of everything being destabilized, and how I realized how spoiled and privileged I am that I had been all my life, and to realize that to be this upset and to be this on a 10 every day, and the outrage and the anger, I just wanted to fucking fight people, you know? And I was like, I have to go see a psychiatrist. It's good that her Trump derangement and that somebody being elected in office was enough to make her deranged, that she didn't actually go out there and start fighting people, but she went and saw a psychiatrist. She might need a little more than that if this is how riled up you get over somebody being elected. There really is something that must be said. And certainly this is applicable for people on both sides of the aisle. But it seems like it's, for me, at least, from the way that I've been looking at this, that there's a larger population on the left that does this than on the right. And that when you don't get your way, you become unhinged. You become, like she said, so privileged that I didn't get my way and my life is just in a complete disarray. And how do I handle myself? President Obama was one of those presidents that many people vehemently disagreed with and even hated. But when he came into presidency, what they did was some of them became objective, and they held a standard to him. And some of them became deranged, became hysterical, became a lunatic, became a giant windbag of a bunch of nonsensical bullshit. She was one of the latter, and I'm sure that we can all point to people on both sides of the aisle that have done it for Trump as well as President Obama, even George W. Bush, all the way back to whenever you got into politics. I'm sure you can find people on both sides of the aisle that really did have this. It's not just because even Democrats could have done it for Obama, and certainly we see a lot of Republicans that are doing that for Trump. It's just, there is a level of, I am so comforted in my life. I have such an easy life that I can become so outraged over something that shouldn't have that much of an or have that much of a change in my life, that it really is a telltale. Here's a statement that I don't know if I agree with it or believe it, but she says, I'm a more mindful citizen because of it, and I woke up. I am in an awakening, Handler continued. She also said that Trump's election led her to smoking the marijuanas and pivoting away from alcohol, calling cannabis the gateway drug to meditation or meditation. I mean, there may be some accuracy with that. The reports go that when you smoke pot, you really don't do much. You sit down, you think things through, you talk about things. You might chuckle, you might laugh, you might have a good time. You might eat some Cheetos. You might eat some Cheetos dipped in ketchup. You might eat some weird concoctions, but you don't find people smoking the pot, smoking the Mary Janes, and going out there and being reckless with their lives. You see them kind of mellowing out a little bit, and that's one of the desired side effects for many people. And so it's a good thing that she's able to chill out and keep on keeping on with that, Chelsea Handler. Keep smoking the pots and slow down on your life and realize that maybe, just maybe, we could be a little more objective. We can find the good in things, and we can certainly criticize when actual bad things are bad, not just because somebody called somebody Dumbo. I mean, for God's sake, we're all adults here. We've all been called names. Names are not nice. It's not nice to make fun of somebody who just made it to 1,000 friends on his Facebook page. And despite the fact that you want to start up a podcast with them, despite the fact that you helped bring them into the libertarian movement, despite the fact of a lot of things, you could be Shane Sweeney coming after and kicking me when I'm down, man. But I digress on the personal story. Can we be grown-ups about this stuff and say, yeah, you know what, Trump, don't call people Dumbo. It's not cool. It can be funny. It can be comical, but it's not cool. We don't need to get the entire media up in a tizzy over this. We really don't. So while we're talking, I realize a lot of the show tonight is going to be about Trump. We will get away from Trump here in a little bit, I promise you. 2 more stories on this, and then we will be moving into much bigger Cheetos dipped in barbecue sauce. That sounds interesting. 2 more stories with Trump, and then we will be moving away from Trump, and we'll be talking about a little bit of world news, and we'll also be talking about Sacramento. And then I will be opening up the phone lines for you guys. If you guys got topics you guys want to call in about, whether it's something we've covered already, actually 3 topics, I apologize. Something we've covered already tonight, something new, some new idea, something that's on your mind, you guys want to call in, the phone lines will be open tonight. So here's been something that I've been seeing a lot of people push on different social media platforms. This may not be you, because I know people talking about economics, talking about revenue, talking about spending and all those things is not necessarily something that a lot of people, regardless of how politically involved they are, is not something that everyone gets involved with. And that's okay. No problem. Everyone's got their forte. Everyone's got their little cracks in the politics that they dive into, and that's where their goal, that's where they're going to. But there's been some malfeasance. There's been some lies that have been promulgated, and the idea that the Trump administration is spending money at a slower rate, that debt is going down, that the deficit is going down. Any of these things, they're unequivocally false. And so this is coming from Conservative Review. Conservative Review, so a right-wing source. A very strong economy is one key to debt reduction, but spending restraint is a necessary component that must be vigorously pursued. Those are the words of the GOP platform adopted at the 2016 convention, nearly 3 years later, following 2 years of GOP trifecta control of the House, Senate, and White House. Spending for the first 6 months of the fiscal year is 13.7% higher than Obama's final year, despite the best job market in decades. That's right, the economy is booming. It is doing great. It's fantastic to see the growth in the economy. That still means that you got to cut spending. Despite the best job market in decades, the debt under the GOP control has surged even higher than under Obama, putting to rest the notion that a good economy can grow its way out of a spending binge this deep. Excessive government spending inhibits economic growth. On Friday, the CBO released its monthly review for March, which also tallied the spending and debt figures for the first half of the fiscal year of 2019, despite a 1% increase in the revenue. So revenue is still going up. Despite the fact that revenue is going up, the deficit for just the first 6 months of the fiscal year is $693 billion. That's right, $0.7 trillion. $94 billion more than this time last year. That is because spending has increased by 5% over the last year. So 1% increase in revenue, 4% or 5% increase in spending, 4% increase in the deficit. This is not good for the country. This is not good for the $22 trillion that we are in debt right now as a nation. That means that you and every single one of your family members, your friends, all have a tax burden on you for the rest of your lives. Enjoy that, because you will never be able to pay this down, because the interest rates are just absolutely exorbitant, and you'll never be able to handle this. The calls for a Calvin Coolidge must be heard. We need a president to come in and to be a strong advocate for cutting the spending. The revenue is important. Have a booming economy. How do we get a booming economy? Get the government out of the way. Get the government out of the way of commerce and of enterprise. Once you do that, like what we've seen with President Trump and the economy here in the country, that booms. What also needs to happen? You cut your spending. If you are in debt, spending more money does not get you out of debt. Spending less money will help you get out of debt. When money is just printed with no real backing, the deficit will always be the rolling snowball. Absolutely right, Jesse Miller. Absolutely right. It is important, it is vital that we get away from the fiat system, that we move towards some form of money backed by something. Despite what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said, and just print enough money to handle all of our debts and our deeds, it doesn't actually work. Venezuela, a couple %1,000%, multiple thousands of percents of inflation. There now, it is more valuable to use your money, to use your bills, to wipe your ass with, rather than use toilet paper. Because toilet paper, you have to use more of those bills to get the toilet paper. Might as well just wipe with it, bring it back to the government and say, hey, this one's dirty. Can I get a new one? This one fell on a stripper. Can I get a new one? Sorry, I had a spill on the ground. I had to wipe it up with something. My paper towels are gold. And sell these on the market right now. Pay off my rent for the next 6 months. There needs to be fiscal responsibility. And certainly that is not something that we saw from any, really, I mean, honestly, any of the presidents in the past, any of the Congresses in the past. How often are we actually, 25,000%, thank you. How often are we actually in a surplus? Whew. Let's actually, let me Google that. I apologize for not having this. Last year, U.S. surplus. Let's see when we were. 2001, we were in, according to the CBO, the United States had a budget surplus during the fiscal year of 2001. So for the last 18 years, we've been running a deficit. That's not a good time. It's never a good time to be running this. The only president to ever run and run a surplus the entire time was Calvin Coolidge, my favorite president. Between Calvin Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge is currently #1 president on my list because he was somebody that said, "Look, not my authority, not my power." Right? He was somebody that respected on a lot of stances. He respected the presidential authorities and powers. Second one is Harrison, and Harrison is one that's brought up by a lot of libertarians because the man was only in office for 31 days before he passed. Why was he so good? He obviously couldn't destroy the country in any way. These are important things for us to understand, that you have to cut the spending and work towards removing this debt. Eventually, it gets to the point where the conspiracy theories that America is just a cash cow for this country, that country, and everything else. Eventually, that becomes kind of the mainstream idea when there's no concern, there's no, hey, let's actually reduce the debt. We did have President Trump on the campaign trail say, hey, we're going to get rid of the national debt by the end of my second term. And thus far, not a scintilla of hope that this is going to be coming true. So we'll sit idly by and hope that this does come through eventually, but I'm not holding my breath for this. While we talk about spending, I do want to go bounce away from Trump and then back to Trump. So Bernie Sanders, if you guys remember, he was one of the supporters. He's been a supporter for a long time for Medicare for all, for single-payer systems, for nationalizing the healthcare, for however you want to describe, of making it where the entire nation has to pay for the healthcare of everybody within it. Bernie Sanders is now going to be rolling out an updated Medicare for all proposal this upcoming Wednesday. This is coming from the Hill. Sanders, who is again seeking the Democratic nomination for president, despite the fact that he's an independent, will unveil the bill alongside Senate co-sponsors, some of whom are candidates for presidency. The only one that have been that have said on this new bill coming out that they would support it is Booker. Gillibrand, Harris, Warren's office did not respond. did not reply to the request. But if we go back to 2017, the last time that this bill was pushed out there, Cory Booker, Gillibrand, Harris, and Warren all supported this. And now that they're the president, do we support this other presidential candidate, or do we just try to figure out our own way, our own path to implement the same darn thing? Problem with Medicare for all and how that situation goes is that there really is a trifecta when it comes to a market. There's a trifecta. And one of those is only there by force or by allowing the market to be completely unregulated. The first two, the arguably the only important ones, is quality and cost. The third one is a universality. If you want everybody to have something, it means you need to deregulate it, right? If we look at televisions across this country, how many poor people, how many people in Section 8 housing, how many people that live paycheck to paycheck, how many people that really can't afford much, they're living, in shambles, own a TV? I would argue most people, right? Most people. Not everyone, but most people. TVs are extremely cheap. They've never had government regulation or really heavy controls. The government's never gotten involved with them. The prices of televisions have been dropping drastically over time. If you want to have everyone have it, get the government out of the way. If you try to implement the government to control and Medicare for all, national health care, all these things, what the end result is that you're going to take away either from the cost, right? So you're going to raise the rates of how much this costs, or you're going to reduce the quality. We can point to different markets right now. We can point to different countries right now that have national health care, and where it is either the cost is the demands for more money is growing. With Finland and the UK right now, their national healthcare systems are failing. They're failing right now because they have not thrown enough money at this, because they're not taking enough. They're not extorting enough from their people in order to continue to provide the healthcare systems that they have implemented. And so both the UK and Finland are looking to, how are we going to get away from this? How are we going to back away from this? What are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this and provide better healthcare? If you want to look at it from the other side, where countries are saying, look, we're going to keep the cost down. We're going to keep the cost down. You can look at Canada. You can look at Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico specifically is my favorite one to discuss on this. But when you look at Puerto Rico, they put a price control on how much the hospitals make, on how much the doctors make, on how much the facilitators make, on how much the janitors inside the hospitals make, the nurses. Everybody had a cap. And when you put those caps on there, people realize I'm doing a lot more work than what I'm being paid. Do I really want to stay in this job? Do I want to continue to provide for others when others are able to work in markets and make more money than me, doing less stuff, doing less important things? I mean, what's more important than saving lives? Why is there a cap? And so people get out of those markets. They get out of those fields. And Puerto Ricans were fleeing to other countries to where they can continue to provide the same goods and services to others, but they could be paid a reasonable wage. So Puerto Rico now has a shortage of doctors. They have a shortage of facilities. And because of the controls that are still there, the regulation that is still there, no one is driving to come in there. No one is hopping on their rafts to come into Puerto Rico to help provide and support and give healthcare and give the humanitarian aid that's needed there. But instead, people are sitting there, they're dying. They're suffering. They're waiting weeks, months on end to see surgeons, to see specialists for life-threatening illnesses. It's not good. So if you want to provide a better health care to this country, pushing towards the Medicare for all, pushing towards the national health care is not the desired effect, is not going to be the outcome. We are going to pick which whenever you want. And if you look at the Medicare for All that was attempted in 2017 by Bernie Sanders, he was trying to push down those wages. The Green New Deal with their Medicare for All, they wanted to cut 40% of the money that's going to hospitals and healthcare providers. So you can see which ones that they're going towards. While they say that they go towards the Nordic ones, while they say that look at Britain, look at the UK, look at Finland, look at Sweden, look at their healthcare. What they try to implement is oftentimes much more similar to Venezuela and Puerto Rico. It's a huge issue, very huge issue that not many people are picking up on. So we will see this come out on Wednesday. We will see the Bernie bros, we'll see the lefties jump and exclaim how proud they are and how thankful they are that Bernie Sanders is coming out and pushing this nonsense once again. It is not going to be for the benefit of us. Now I'm gonna hop back over to Trump for a quick minute. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen is leaving Wednesday. Will her replacement be worse? Reason Roundup. So this is from Reason, as I said, one of my favorite news sources. Nationalized healthcare is a terrible idea that would devastate healthcare across our nation. Absolutely right, Red. Absolutely right. Kirstjen Nielsen announced on Sunday that she'll be stepping down as the DHS Customs and Border Protection, as the head of DHS. Customs and Border Protection Chief Mickey. I can't pronounce the name tonight. Will then become the acting secretary of DHS. Her resignation comes less than a year and a half after she's replaced John Kelly. Now, if you guys are like, oh, John Kelly, that name sounds familiar. Yes, that is the current chief of staff. I'm sorry. He was the chief of staff up until January. Wow. So she replaced John Kelly, and her and Trump have never been on great terms. Why has Trump and Kirstjen never been on good terms or great terms? Because despite the fact that she has been a strong supporter of the law and following through on kind of what Trump has wanted to, she doesn't do it to the effectiveness of what Trump has been desiring. Trump has been a hawk on the border. Whether it's what you agree with or not, it's true, right? He's been a hawk on the border. He's found that to be his campaign slogan throughout the 2016 election. It's been something that's been hit on time and time again. It seems like if they're not talking about the Russiagate scandal, they're talking about Trump and the border, from the media's point of view. And Nielsen has arguably been the most aggressive secretary in the department's short history in cracking down on immigration, with her legacy likely being defined among progressives by the zero-tolerance prosecution policy of late spring and early summer of 2018 that resulted in the separations of thousands of families at the U.S.-Mexican border. None of it appears to be enough for Trump. Nielsen's resignation was preceded on Thursday night by the abrupt withdrawal of the nomination of acting immigration or ICE Director Ron Vitilio to formally lead the agency, with Trump telling reporters Friday morning that he wanted to go in a tougher direction. While it's not yet clear whether Trump requested Nielsen's resignation or not, it certainly appears as if that tougher direction is extending to a new DHS secretary. With nearly 100,000 migrants apprehended by Border Patrol agents along the U.S.-Mexico border in March, Trump is yet again ruminating angrily and obsessively over immigration. This is coming from a progressive. This isn't coming from Reason. This is a quote from somebody's article. Rifling in speeches about telling migrants, "We're full and go back." I do want to point out, when he says telling migrants we're full and to go back, he's talking about illegal immigration. And Trump has recently been quoted as saying that he actually wants to open up legal immigration in this country. Right now, we're sitting at 1 million per year. Right now, he's okay with 1 million per year, but he actually wants to open it up. And what he points to is what a lot of libertarians have been pointing to. If the economy is booming, that means you're going to need more people. You're going to need more labor. You're going to need more people filling into the positions, filling into the new jobs. into the market that are being opened up by a booming economy. And so President Trump recently has been saying such, and that's fantastic. It's good to see him wanting to open up on the immigration side of things, opening up on the legal immigration. It's something that I've been a fan of for, whether it was when I was a conservative years ago or whether now, even as a libertarian, I'm in favor of legal immigration, 100%. When it comes to legal immigration, we can have discussions. But when it comes to legal immigration, if you can vet somebody and you can, there's a request, there's consent on both sides, fantastic. Open that up. There really isn't a reason to have a limit on those things. Sure, we can have a discussion into assimilation and all those topics, but as a gist of things, open it up. So President Trump has been faltering on this, and I think it's good the way that he's been faltering. I hope Rand Paul is getting into him and helping sway that a little bit, and I'm excited for that. But there's so many concerns with who's coming in. Who's going to be replacing Nielsen? Well, Kevin Mick. If he is, he's a career border officer. He looks the part better than Nielsen, but he's not the dude who blames the Democrats for everything or talks of invasion. And he, like any other human on earth, can't physically stop migrants from setting foot on U.S. soil, says Dara Lind. This is the same progressive that was being discussed about. When it comes to this entire topic, though, this has been something that I've been talking about. This is something that I've been pushing, and I hope that this isn't falling on deaf ears. But the policy that Trump wants and the outcomes that he has promised aren't within the power of the White House or the Department of Homeland Security. This is a requirement that he must be involved with Congress, and arguably needs to actually change the Constitution. There needs to be an amendment there. Because many people, when they talk about this, they talk about Article 4, Section 4, and being able to stop the invaders. Invaders are not economic migrants. Invaders are people coming here to promote terror, coming here to cause destruction to this land. And so you don't get to lay the blanket across everyone and say everyone's an invader. No, it has to be a military force that's trying to come into this country. And so there needs to be some honest conversations about the value of words, and that would mean that he not only has to get Congress on board with his ideas and what he wants, but he also may need to come down to changing up the Constitution a little bit to get exactly what he wants. So as people get worried, as people get scared over who's replacing Mrs. Nielsen, don't be. It's really not that big of a deal. Because at the end of the day, we know who's pulling the strings. We know who's in control of this all, and it's not us. And that's for damn sure. That is for damn sure. So I'm gonna play a video for you guys. If you guys know who Kevin Boltz is, we're gonna sling on over to Sacramento City Council. This was posted last month, and I was debating on if I should cover it or not, because he does use a little bit of violent language. You can tell that he's in an uproar, but I think that there's much value in this. And so I'm going to play this for you guys, and hopefully this will work out quite well for you guys. All right. So this is Kevin Boltz, and he's talking to Sacramento City Council over Stephon Clark's killing. Now, trigger warning. I know there may be some of you that maybe get offended over this, but he does use some pretty strong terms, and I think that certainly some of it is vindicated.
I'm going to start by addressing something you said when you came right back in. You said if we acted in the fashion we did again, this meeting could not go on. Yet multiple people have been killed by these motherfuckers and Stephon. And it has, no, shut up. It has continued to go on. So you care more about decorum in here than you do people who are alive. Because you've shut down meetings over decorum. Stop looking at me like that. You're so immature. But you haven't shut them down over killing people. My journey with Sacramento killing black people began with Joseph Mann.
So I want you guys to realize he is outraged. He is upset. He is angered. He is a lot of things. Take some of the bombastic things that he's saying, bring it down to a reasonable level, and listen to the message that he's saying. This is something that I think that would be beneficial for us, regardless of what side we're on. When we listen to people that are outraged, it's easy to go, oh, he's crazy, he's violent, he's a lunatic, he's just out there and he's deranged. Let's listen to him. Let's listen to him a little bit.
A human being in need of emergency medical attention, he was instead met with the care of SAC PD in the form of, fuck this guy, I'm going to hit him, Officer Tennis.
So he's talking about specific events, and he's going to lead into Stephon Clark here in a second. But it's important that we see there are many people that have been, whether it's intentional or not, have not had the wool pulled off from over their eyes, that there have been absolute police atrocities that have been justified, or not justified, that have been defended and protected by the state. To put it in simple terms, the state said the state did nothing wrong. And oftentimes, it's not accurate. The state does things wrong, and they're never held accountable for it. We see this with our politicians. We see this with our government officials. We see this with just your average Joe Schmo that's in government. And we certainly see that with the police. And he's raising awareness for this. And we're going to come from this story, and we're going to follow it up to what happened this last week. But it's important that we hear this out. Remember what he's saying.
Last year, Stephon Clark, a human being regardless of accused activities, toxicology reports, or relationship status, was a human being with a Fourth Amendment right, who instead was criminalized due to his race and murdered in a state-sanctioned execution. You can't even look at me, I'm so right. Last evening, I watched an overfunded and hyper-militarized force.
When he's talking about this, there was a protest the night before, and 84 protesters, 84 people coming out and discussing and asking for to be heard were arrested. Now, there was some actions of aggression out there, and some people may have been warranted for them to be detained. But 84 people is a gross exaggeration of the truth of that. And he comes on the night after. This is where this comes to. And this is where, when a lot of people speak about how the police force have become fascist, they have become controlling, manipulative. He brings some truth to this, and we'll get into it as well.
Police, occupational force, agitate protesters, instill fear and panic, and then kettle them in a classic kettle and corral tactic, which, by the way, was started in the open-air prison known as Palestine by Israeli police and taught to our police all over this country.
Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear that, right? Palestine, Israel, that's been a huge point of contention for a lot of people. It's been something that a lot of people are worried about, that, we have to protect Israel. We have to protect Palestine. We have to, condemn Israel, condemn Palestine. And regardless of what side you're on, I want you guys to realize something, that there were Palestinians living in Israel that were pushed out through eminent domain, that were pushed out by force by the Israelis. And regardless on how long they lived on those farmlands, regardless of how long their families have had roots in that area, they were forced out. And some of the atrocities was the way that they were pushed out. And he's speaking about that and the way that the police force were able to do that, right? You rile up people once they're feeling danger, once they're feeling threatened. Oh, what a vile beast. That animal becomes dangerous when threatened.
How much we pay to learn that? The underlying factor of all these cases is SAC law enforcement dehumanizes people on our dollars and with your agreement.
This is where it's important that whenever we have an actual situation, when we have an atrocity that's committed, it requires blind justice. blind justice. If a person, an average Joe, was to commit the same action as what a police officer would do, would you hold that person accountable for their decisions, for their actions, or would you let them go in the same? And oftentimes when we look at the atrocities committed by police officers across this country, it is not blind, nor is it justice.
When was the last time you were dehumanized? Because I think it's about time.
Here's where we get into bombastic stuff.
You have shown zero ability to empathize with us. You have shown less ability to care. You are all terrible officials, in my opinion, worse people. To quote Dr. King, a riot is the language of the unheard, and you ain't fucking listening. The last person who spoke before the singer said Anne-Marie Schubert has no soul. To quote Stokely Carmichael, in order for peaceful protest to work, your overseer has to have a conscience. You don't have one. You radicalized 84 people on a bridge last night for no reason. They showed up peacefully and were still arrested. Someone up here with all your education, explain to me why they should be peaceful next time. What is the onus? What is the impetus? You fucked them up when they were peaceful.
So this is a very important thing, because I know when it comes to being a libertarian, when it comes to be somebody that's not in favor of violating the non-aggression principle, basically I'm not somebody who's going to initiate force. But when you make demands and you say, I am not going to be victimized by you, our society is not going to be victimized by something, and you continue to be persistent in resisting the authoritarian actions of those appointed over you, those who take an oath to protect you and your constitutional rights. When you have that, eventually people people become outraged, and eventually some people snap. And we're gonna, as this continues on, just with 13 seconds left, there's something that leads for some people to be concerned, and actions were taken.
You don't get it. You don't listen. You think it's going to stay like this. And I'm going to start right here saying, I don't speak for anyone else or any group out here. This city's going to burn in the next 30 to 60 days if you don't shut up and listen. Let's start by...
So he says the city is going to burn if you don't listen in the next 30 to 60 days. That was enough for many people to be concerned, to be worried, to be outraged that this man was sitting there and threatening people because they weren't listening to what the protest was about. And so this was just a couple days later. Cell phone video captured the moments the FBI showed up to a Sacramento man's home Monday afternoon. Kevin Boltz, bring him back. Kevin Boltz was prepared and used his cell phone to start streaming the encounter live. I saw them through my window, he said, so I immediately knew, oh, this is the FBI. I'll play this one for you guys as well. Maybe I won't.
Kevin Boltz was prepared.
Saw them through my window.
Cell phone streaming live.
So I immediately knew, like, oh, this is the FBI.
When 3 members of the FBI knocked on
So he
his door
records
Monday
this,
afternoon.
right? And you can see that the video. I apologize. It's too quiet, and so I'm just going to read it for you guys. Kevin Boltz was prepared to use his phone, and when the 3 members of the FBI knocked on his door, he is heard in the video asking them if they have a warrant. He refuses to speak to them when he is told they do not. He exercises his 5th Amendment and his 4th Amendment. If they do not have a warrant signed or affirmed by a judge under oath or affirmation, they don't have any authority to come into his home. He then asks them why they're there. Just statements you made at the Sacramento City Council meeting. We wanted clarification. There was a complaint. There was just a complaint. The day after more than 80 people were detained at a Stephon Clark protest in East Sacramento, Boltz went before city council members with some passionate and heated comments. Much what you guys heard. Play it, it's fine. All right.
the Sacramento FBI office. How are you?
He asked them if they have a warrant.
Nope.
Refuses to talk.
I really don't want to talk to you then.
And asks why they're there.
Just statements you made at the Sacramento City Council meeting. We just wanted clarification.
I went to a meeting and I expressed the frustrations of my community.
Bolts' strong words for city leaders at the March 5th City Council meeting went viral.
This city's gonna burn in the next 30 to 60 days if you don't shut up and listen.
In my opinion, I did not threaten anyone. I did not say I'm going to do these things. I was warning them.
His comments.
That is accurate. He did not threaten anyone. He just said this will happen if you don't shut up and listen, because somebody's going to click. Somebody out there will click.
I did not say I'm going to do these things. I was warning them.
His comments were in response to a Stephon Clark protest in East Sacramento that ended with more than 80 people detained. Bolt stands by his statements and his right to express himself.
When was the last time you were dehumanized? Because I think it's about time.
Members of the FBI told Bolts they were there to follow up on a complaint. In a statement, the FBI said, while we cannot offer comment about any specific matter or ongoing investigation, the FBI must investigate reports it receives.
I guess they have to follow up on that, but at the same time, it's like, is that really what you need to spend your Monday afternoon doing? I mean, there's a lot of worse things going on.
Bolt says he plans to continue expressing himself in front of city leaders despite this 1-minute interaction with the FBI.
And I really got to say, thank you. Thank you to Bolt for stepping up and for saying something. It may not be the messaging that we all want to hear. It may not be the messaging that's the most acceptable, that you can just really bite your teeth into and say, I'm 100% on board with you. But stepping up and saying, look, there are atrocities happening, and instead of actually looking at these things, instead of listening to the people that are claiming that there's a wrongdoing and injustices that are being committed on your watch, if you don't want to do that, then I'm going to come to you. And I'm going to push this message. And so bravo to Bolt for doing this. Like I said, it's not something you have to agree with 100% on, but listen to the core of what he's saying. Listen to us. It is vital. It is important that when we say that there's something wrong, you don't just sweep it under the rug like what we've seen across this country time and time again. I'm not saying that every single time that somebody, that Black Lives Matter or this group or that group says that an atrocity happened, that it happened, and that the police were not justified in the actions that they took. But at least take an honest look at it. At least attempt to provide blind justice. Because if you're not willing to do that, then I have no idea what it is that you think you're doing in office. And so bravo to the man for pushing up for that. While we talk about that form of freedom of speech, the ability to come out and redress your grievances to government, coming out and being able to say what is really burning in your soul, to be reached out and to be heard by others, and thankfully that video went viral. While we're talking about all of that, I want to take it to the other side. Well, let's talk about the atrocities. Do you think that it is in the best interests of people, regardless of where you live, regardless of what country you're in, state, city, locality, whatever it is, do you think that it's more important that we can talk about anything and everything? Or do you think that there should be regulation, control, and limitations on what is allowed and what is not allowed? If you are of the former, I agree with you. If you are of the latter, you might be agreeing with New Zealand, with Australia, and even with, pardon me, with Facebook itself. So since the shooting down in New Zealand, which I'm sure most of us remember, the New Zealand mosque shooting of Christchurch, there has been extra criticism. There's been extra legislation. There's been a push towards controlling and limiting as much as possible in order to ensure that the safety and prosperity of all is there and acceptable. Australia's parliament passed legislation on Thursday that could imprison social media executives if their platforms stream real violence such as the New Zealand mosque shootings. Critics warn that some of the most restrictive laws about online communication in the democratic world could have unforeseen consequences. Absolutely true, including media censorship and reduced investment in Australia. Who cares about Australia? Sorry, Boogie. But when it comes to this, If we are going to say we don't like this speech, this event, that event, you can't talk about it, you can't display it, you can't share it, you can't have discussions about it, and we're going to hold not just those individuals discussing it, but the platforms in which they were using it, we're going to hold them accountable for allowing this. Imagine, or just accept your speech is gone. It is entirely removed. You can't criticize them. You can't criticize this. You can't criticize that. That's fine, but you can't do that. Not on my platform. You're off. X-nay. The idea that you should be free to speak about and to do as you please. If a platform doesn't want you on their platform, I don't want you anyways. But if they're going to push for legislation, much like what they're doing here there in Australia, this is where you have to remember that message I was telling you guys about earlier, that you guys got to keep in the back of your mind. Why is it that somebody would push for legislation, control, to make something illegal, to keep something illegal? Because it benefits them. So what this law does, this law makes it a crime for social media platforms to not remove abhorrent violent material quickly. What does quickly mean? It's ambiguous. The crime would also be punishable by 3 years in prison and a fine of over 10.5 million Australian dollars, or about 7.5 million American, or 10% of the platform's annual turnover, whichever is larger. So if you're not making that much money as a small platform and you don't have that much control because you are a small platform, and somebody shares something abhorrent, something that is violent, and you don't get to it in time because you're small, guess what? Can't afford to stay afloat. So Facebook, of course, is all over this idea. Yeah, we can stomp out our competition. We can prevent them from growing. We can prevent them from being able to share out videos, discussions, and anything else because we are big, we are strong, we can handle these fines and fees, and we have the manpower, we have the control, we have the algorithms to be able to just absolutely go out and, ooh, wow. Breaking news, Representative Eric Swalwell, Mr. Nukes the World for gun control, is running for president. We'll get there. This way they can control and they can prevent competition from coming in. So, of course, Facebook is going to be involved with this, right? Much like when we saw net neutrality. Who were the big supporters of this? It was the Netflixes. It was the Facebooks. It was the big media the big internet users, because it prevented the smaller guys from being able to have the same, or it hurts the smaller guys more than it hurts the big guys. And certainly this one is there. What's going on, Auntie Vodka? It's this stuff right here is the scary things that are happening around the world. This may happen in New Zealand. This may happen in Australia. This may happen in the UK. This may happen across Europe. Because we know that, as this article even says, they're looking to take this legislation and move it to the Group of 20 Countries Forum as a model for holding social media companies accountable. Imagine holding people accountable for the voluntary interactions of others on their platform. So now you're making it to where you have to hire on more manpower to become a business. You have to make sure that your security forces, that your algorithms are tried and true, and you have enough tech squad out there to make sure that nothing bad comes on your platform. Otherwise, I'm sure Facebook will be one of those platforms to help ensure that they get shut down. We saw Facebook, we saw Twitter, we saw Google, we saw all of these speech-crushing platforms dog all over Gab.ai, because Gab.ai was like, no, free speech all the way. Gab.ai is still struggling. It's been struggling. It's not easy to get a hold of Gab.ai, and its population has been destroyed by the other big, giant social media giants. Giant social media giants. That was really good. But it's been destroyed by them because they don't want their competition coming up. They don't want to be removed. They want to keep you, and they want to ensure that you don't talk about the things that they don't want you to talk about. I have personal friends who got banned off of Facebook, 30-day bans, for talking about atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. That happened for saying things such as, we're not going to give up our guns because the Jews taught us a very important lesson. And it was a picture of Jewish people being led onto the trains, forced onto trains, driven into Auschwitz, driven into death camps, and being killed, being slaughtered. We're not going to give up. And this is something that the world is turning a blind eye to. That we can't talk about things, we can't share the mistakes of the past because they encourage us to do the same. If they silence those who speak about freedom, eventually freedom is not in our vernacular. They're looking to guide us, to manipulate us, to control us, and to prevent us from being as free as possible. And this is something that is absolutely scary, and I hope that this is reaching to you guys. I really do. But with that, guys, I gotta leave on a positive note. What's something positive? Eric Swalwell is running for president. How about that? Eric Swalwell is running for president of the United States. The man who threatened to nuke the country, because if we don't give up our guns, he said, look, well, we've got the nukes. That man is running for president of the United States. So if you thought that there wasn't enough, if you didn't think there was enough people in the circus already, Eric Swalwell's in the ring. There we go. The man who reminds me of, which Batman movie was that? With the half a face. It's Puke Nukem. He reminds me of that individual from that movie. And I apologize for forgetting the name, but nonetheless, it is... The circus is in town and everyone's invited. Watch it out, check it out, and keep laughing and have a good time because they are all nonsensical, and hopefully the country doesn't devolve itself even further than it already has. And let's see if we can get some better candidates coming out 2020, 2024, 2028. And let's see if we can make liberty. Let's see if we can legalize freedom once again. Because right now it is a scary day in America, and I'm leaving on a bad note, but I apologize. You guys have a great night. I will see you guys this Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you guys have not followed us here at Muddied Waters, follow us on Twitter, Muddied_Waters. Follow us on the Facebook page, on the YouTube. Go check us out, muddiedwatersoffreedom.com, muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. You guys can follow me personally on my Twitter account, on my Facebook page, also on the Patreon. If you guys want to throw support and be a subscriber out there, as little as $1 a month, whatever it is, I appreciate it all. I love you all. Thank you all for being here, for spending your Monday night with me. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. And I hope you guys enjoy your week. I'll see you guys on Friday night. We'll have many more great discussions to hit up. So have a good night, and I'll see you guys on Friday about 7 p.m. Eastern. Take care.